I just realized I was muted. So welcome everybody. You obviously didn't hear me as I welcomed you all. We are just going to wait another minute for everyone to join, but welcome to today's Marine Biodiversity Network Friday. We'll just give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll make a start. And as you roll in, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, your name and which country you're joining from. Thank you. Okay, I think we can make a start, and people will join us as we move through the webinar. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Brendan O'Connor, and I will be moderating the session today. The title of today's webinar is The Role of Participatory Methodologies in Large-Scale Biodiversity Monitoring, Present Status and Future Opportunities. So I'd like to add a little bit of context to that title, just to set the scene. We're going to have two presentations today, but firstly, I just, as I said, want to contextualize the presentations. So public participation in research is by far one of the main and cost-effective sources for big data and knowledge production in biodiversity monitoring. However, there are still some concerns about the quality of the reported data from volunteers. In recent years, quality has been extended as a multidimensional concept. Accurate observations from understanding the biodiversity status and dynamics should be considered as one of the important components, but others may also play a role in biodiversity pattern identification. And two of those examples are completeness, which is the maximisation of the number of observations per unit time or space, and another example is timeliness, which is the early identification of target species. So those should be considered in sort of the extended multidimensional quality concept. In this presentation, I'm going to share my screen. Apologies. I obviously have not had enough coffee this morning. There we go. So in this presentation, these concepts will be discussed, particularly in the framework of two EU projects, the outcomes from the ANERIS project, which stands for the Operational Sensing Light Technologies for Marine Ecosystems, which will be wrapping up at the end of this year. And then the challenges addressed in the BEAGLE project, which will begin in October of 2026. The BEAGLE project is the biodiversity methods for advancing monitoring at large scales. So both the AIR Centre and MBON has graciously allowed me to introduce the program that I work for, which is the GLOBE program, and it also is another participatory science focused program. And so I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes introducing an overview of the GLOBE program and sort of identify some of the key resources that you may find useful. So my name, as I said, is Brendan O'Connor. My background, I have a degree in environmental science from the University of Limerick in Ireland, master's in environmental engineering from Queen's University in Belfast. And then I popped over to the other side of the Atlantic and did an additional master's in biological oceanography from the University of South Florida. So I work with NASA's crowdsourcing GLOBE program, and the GLOBE program is global learning and observations to benefit the environment. It's a citizen science or volunteer-based project, and the goal of it is to advance Earth system sciences through data collection. You'll see the map on the right-hand side. It indicates where each of the 127 countries that are members of the program. They're divided up into 6 different regions. The program itself is sponsored by NASA, and then we have support from 3 US agencies. The first is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, which we call NOAA, the National Science Foundation, and the Department of State. So we just celebrated our 31st year of the GLOBE program, which tells you we have 31 years of data. The 2 main resources that you may find useful are the globe.gov webpage and the observer.globe.gov. We're reaching almost 300 million data points in our open database, which is exciting and scary at the same time. Just as a huge volume of data. So the structure of the program, it's split into 4 spheres. We have atmosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere, and pedosphere. And I think the 2 that probably link most strongly with the presentations today are the biosphere and hydrosphere. And each of those spheres then have a number of protocols underneath them. And the protocols are the sort of tools that we provide volunteers to collect the data. And that provides volunteers with the information on the scientific background, the data collection methods, the learning activities to sort of amplify the learning and understanding of the specific measurable, and then standardized data sheets. We also have an app, which is called the Globe Observer app. It's a free app. It's downloadable from both the App Store and from Google Play. It has historically had 4 specific focus areas, which were clouds, mosquito habitat, land cover, and trees. But as of December 2025, we now have a mechanism that anyone collecting any of the protocol data for any of the protocols that you just saw on the previous slide, they can now enter through the data entry. So that's a very brief overview. I'm leaving you with the 2 web pages that are at the very top of the image. Just if you want to get additional information, those are probably the 2 key locations to search. And again, my email address is at the bottom there if you need to reach out. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those via email. So now we're going to get into the main context of today's presentation and webinar, and it's my great honor to introduce to you all to the 2 presenters. We have Jaume Piera, who is joining us from the Institute of Marine Sciences in Barcelona, Spain, and Rocio Neto, who is a junior researcher at Biopolis in Portugal. I'll give a brief introduction and then a little housekeeping reminder about how we're facilitating questions and answers, and then I'll hand over to Jaume to start the presentations. So Jaume Piera is the head of the BMOS research group, which coordinates the management of the Minca Participatory Observatory. He has combined his naturalist vocation with a multidisciplinary training. His background includes a bachelor's degree in telecommunications engineering from the Polytech University of Catalonia, a master's degree in biology at the University of Barcelona, and a doctorate degree doing research in environmental physics from the University of Girona. He is the coordinator of the EU ANERIS project, and which is where many life sensing technologies have been combined to produce the first operational marine biology products. He will also participate in the upcoming EU project BEAGLE that I introduced at the very beginning, and that's going to start in October of 2026. Rocio is a marine biologist specializing in understanding how physical stress affects rocky intertidal organisms. Her research focuses on the ecological and physiological consequences of thermal stress under both natural and experimental conditions. She has extensive experience working with a wide variety of model species across a wide range of geographical regions in both the Northeast and the Southwest Atlantic. So the way we're going to work through today's webinar, we invite you during the course of the presentations to ask any questions that you have using the Q&A tab that you'll see at the bottom of the screen. But I am now going to stop talking and hand over to Jaume, who I know have all been eagerly waiting, and I'm very excited to learn more about his program and next steps. So over to you, Jaume.
Okay, thank you very much, Brendan. So I will share my screen, and I will start right now. Okay, so I hope now you could see my screen.
It looks perfect.
So let's start, and just as a kind of brief introduction, we will want to mention that we have split this talk in two parts. And the first part is a little bit more theoretical, just to provide a kind of framework of what we understand or which are the components of this participatory monitoring. And the second part will be much more practical. Let's put all these ideas into practice in two particular cases. One is in the Mediterranean, you will see we call it Biomarató, and the other is in the Atlantic as a tidal ecosystem. It's called Biomaratona. That will be the part that Rocío will explain. So just a kind of conceptual framework. We always think that from the data, from the monitoring, obviously we can think on this process of knowledge production, and the final goal obviously is reaching to this wisdom level, if you want, that in which we understand completely the system we are studying, or if we are managers, things that we fully understand the system, we can take them decisions that we take in order to successful management outcomes. But here, what we will talk is in the first part, from this data to the information extraction. You can see that in these information layers, usually we process the outputs, but then we identify some patterns and trends that gives us the clues, usually to make a hypothesis or questions that we want to address later on in probably some experimental domains or tests that to validate such a kind of hypothesis. And the main question is, when we collect that data, up to which point this quality of this data from the monitoring can provide these patterns correct and they identify in these trends correctly. And in many cases, people say, well, basically what we need is accurate data. And here we will try to convince that not only accurate data is enough, and in some cases, we need to think in much more elements dimension, this idea of this multidimensional approach of data quality. The main problem, or one of the main challenges, is that we, in nature, and particularly in the marine domain, whenever we go to the field and collect data, we have to keep in mind that there are many different processes ongoing at the same time. Some of them are the larger scale, climatic, if you want, climatic trends, and in other cases could be behavioral or even molecular processes. And you can see the wide range of temporal spatial scales that are playing at the same time. And this gives us one big question whenever we decide to monitor multi-scale processes: for how long we need to observe that process, and how often we need to retrieve observations in terms of try to correct or identify such a kind of patterns or trends that I was mentioned. Obviously, we have to deal with temporal observations, sometimes it's spatial, and also biological. And here we put several elements that we could think, no? In temporal observations, should we sample every hour, every day, every week, for months, every season? And the same happened with the spatials and the biological observations as well. So let's try to split a little bit these two questions. So how long it's linked to coverage, so which will be the coverage of our observations. And we will start with this example. You will see we start with a theoretical domain and a theoretical approach, and how at the end participatory data could be an important element on that. So one of the first probably researchers that tried to address the problem of the interactions between organisms was Vito Volterra from one side and Alfred Lotka, and they try to model the interactions between prey and predator, and they do it in a very theoretical way. Basically, they put some differential equations with different parameters in which they will try to summarize what were the main factors that increase the population of predators or decrease that population, and at the same time increase the population of prey and predators. I'm not going in detail because I don't think I have too much time on that equations, but basically they have several parameters. Put it here in different colors. So depending on how you adapt these parameters, the final solution can change. And in some cases, they found that the system can, or the populations can oscillate. And obviously, you can see here two different scenarios in which the oscillations has, I would say, a characteristic period different. In one case, 16 years, in other 10 years. It could be very different. this pattern of oscillation later in many other fields, and particularly if you want in the marine domain, has been appeared. And I put just a relatively recent a paper. It was last year, but you can see that in this part there was clearly such a kind of oscillations. One of the controversies, if you want, is that in many people that works in practical way, they think that this type of interactions were too simplistic. If we compare this, that was the theoretical one, with, I would say, one example of real cases in which the authors in that other case, they try to link the different species involved in this prey-predator interaction, you can see how much more complex it is. There are many preys, and in some cases, even the cougar could also prey to the Andean fox. So the predator becomes also in some cases prey. And this is a kind of example that say, look, guys, this is too simplistic, and the output of this needs to treat carefully. And the same happened, with these MPZ models that were quite famous in the marine domain. And this is one of papers that review these MPZ models. And Peter Franks mentioned, and I highlight here in red, that sometimes people think that MPZ models are not useful for anything more, I would say, realistic. And he tried to defend, why in some cases even simplistic scenarios could provide some insightful outcomes. Despite of this, I would like then, during this, I would say, controversy, there was one time series that appears in mid during the 60s. In fact, the first papers were in earlier than that. But for me, the interesting thing is, and you can see here, basically these are the furs that were marketed by this company, the Hudson Bay Company, and that Hudson Bay Company, during a very long period, more than 200 years, they had the rights, to exploit the furs in that area. And here you can see one of, I would say, relatively short period for them, 90 years of data collection, in which there is the number of furs they were selling in the market. And you can see here that it seems that there is an oscillation. Going in detail, a little bit more in detail, you can see that during these 90 years, the peaks of the furs were more or less around 10 years. So it seems, because there are some, I would say, controversy if this oscillation, it's because of the prey-predator relation, or it's more climatic and so on. But I think that in any case, having like 9 periods of oscillation, it seems clear that the oscillation is there. And and the way they collected, it was basically the interaction with indigenous people. And obviously, those indigenous people, I put here just a few examples of the indigenous countries that they were living in that area at that time. And obviously, they have their own dynamics in terms of how they hunt, how they behave. There were big populations, in some cases, smaller populations. And you can see within these 90 years, we can expect many things, I don't know, epidemics, fires, expert people dying, or young people starting collecting and hunting. So that's, I would say, very unstructured way to collect that data. But in any case, they provide a very, very, for me, interesting data to think about on population dynamics. And here, for me, that's the important thing, because you can see here that we have these 90 years, which is, I would say, quite unconventional as a time series, biological time series. So if we just narrow our window of in few years, I put here the example, 2 windows of 6 years, and you can see that if only collect 6 years, which it seems more conventional, records in biological research, people are, in many cases, are collecting within one project that usually the project goes from 3 to 5, 6 years. 6, it's starting becoming a quite large long-term project. But you can see if we only collect data, and I put 2 examples, and I try to do a kind of very basic, I would say, statistics, but it seems that during this period, the population decrease. And it seems that we could conclude that the lynx would disappear in that area because they are reducing nearly 10% of the population in just 6 years. While if we take this part, it's completely on the opposite. And you can see that part of the statistics that could be the coefficient regression seems that quite reasonable, that is quite a strong result, the outcome, the trends. And you can see which is the potential failure on having such a narrow window whenever we collect that data. And this concludes a little bit. I'm trying to convince you that how important is having this long-term series, and that particular case of 90 years. So let's go to the other side. Resolution. How often we need to collect the data, or in how many stations we need to collect data to start having good patterns. And here I would like to mention one example in the Barcelona beaches. And this is already participatory data, but you can see that we have collected during, sorry, I don't know if I can take this. I don't remember, but sorry, I don't know how to. Now, yes. These participatory beaches, we collect during these 8 years data from the 10 beaches. And you can see we collect much more data than the one I show you here, but at least within fishes, crustaceans, and mollusks, you can see the number of species that were recorded in all this every 10 beaches. So now with these numbers, could we select which could be the representative one? And it's just 6 kilometers. And you can see that probably we cannot just consider one station, because the maximum numbers are in the northernmost beach, the Forum Barcelona beach. But you can see that in that one, we identify 355 species, while if we collect in the whole system, we recorded more than 456, if we combine all the fish, crustacean, and mollusk. So you can see that selecting just one, probably we are underrepresent considerably what is going on in these 6 kilometers. That means that probably we need, normally, we could say, okay, at least probably we need 2, if not 3 beaches to sample. And also, obviously, if we want some statistical results robust, at least we need to sample, I don't know, 10 times each of one of those 2 or 3 beaches. So imagine that we put the minimum 20 samples in these 6 kilometers. If we go farther or larger, so imagine if we multiply by 10 in 60 kilometers long, we need at least 200 samples or visits. And if we go to a much larger, 600, we need 2,000 field campaigns, which is a lot. This cannot be afforded by a single team. 2,000 days of sampling per year, it's crazy. So imagine that if go in this theoretical, the ideal scenario whenever we monitor a coastal area is that we could have all the stations covered by very expert people and with very accurate measurements. This will be the ideal case, but this ideal case is very rare and nearly impossible. So usually what happens in the more conventional systems, we choose just a single, I would say a reduced number of stations that we could consider representative of that area, but this means that we maintain the coverage, but we lose a lot of resolution. In the second case, no, okay, let's concentrate in one area and we put all the effort on sampling in those areas so we could keep the resolution, but then we lose coverage. Or the last, and it's the participatory one, in which we try not only be as academics participate on the collection, on data collection, but convince or engage all the people that live in that coast that help us. And yeah, we can expect that whenever this happened, the accuracy of the observations, because they are not academics, could be reduced. And some people say, no, this is not acceptable. And in some cases, they try to demonstrate that this is not acceptable because they compare these results with these results or with these results. But keep in mind that in all of 3, we are losing information. So why you decided that whenever there is, for example, non-consistent results comparing this one with this one, that this one is the good one and this is the bad one. No, we should compare with this because this is the reference, not this. So many people assume that this should be the reference or this should be the reference, and it is not. In all three cases, we are losing information. So we are missing data, and in some cases, it needs to be, formally demonstrated that in some cases this is the best one or this or this. And probably in some cases are pros and cons, and some cases maybe could be better to go to this approach, but having in mind that in this one we are missing a lot of places. And we have seen in the previous examples the risk of, for example, in Barcelona, if we decided, okay, just one beach in Barcelona, but we are missing a lot of information, as I explained it before. So this give us, this idea that why we try to now understand much better this approach on collecting as many stations as possible in integrating people's participation. And this, well, it's basically what is called participatory science or citizen science in some cases. And we based this approach in, I would say, 4 pillars. One is that we considered that we need to, as I will show you later on, that the participation between people and academics is a little bit more complex than in some cases people believe. We also think that we need to organize such a kind of participation with local actions, but addressing global challenges. Also, the role of the participatory observatories as a platforms. We insist that these are non-neutral infrastructures, depending on how you design that infrastructures. The way that you interact with the people is different, and also this can, change the shape a little bit these interactions between people and scientists. And finally, this design of large-scale events as engaging systems, and particularly the biomarathons. So, if we think, in many cases, when people think in citizen science, they think a little bit in this type of picture. I like it very much. Fritz, I feel that it was the one who make it. But you can see that people identify only the academic community and the participatory one. While we think that in many cases, we need to consider not only these two, but also these other two. The mobilizing community, that are the NGOs, schools, SMEs, people that are in direct contact with the citizens, because in several cases, the academics are not the ones that directly interact. In some cases, part of the academic could be the mobilizing, but in some other cases with the local people that are not academic at all. And also the facilitating community. Facilitating community are local authorities, I don't know, the city councils and so on, that help and they are interested on the outcome. So how we can organize the same scheme is that one, that we have the facilitating, the participatory, the academic community in this. We think that what is important is try to collect or try to set up all these type of interactions with these 4 elements in different places all over the area of interest, in some cases large scale area. And we have what we call it sometimes living labs or community of practice. And then all these living labs or community of practice are organized within the Citizen Observatory, which is the one that, if you want, coordinates and organizes such a kind of interactions. And this can integrate and scale up all this information and scale up to, I would say, global socio-ecological challenges. In some cases, this facilitates also that all this data goes to data aggregators, such as GBIF or Eurovis or OVIS. And also in some cases can interact with digital twins or diversity, European research infrastructures, or in general research, large scale research infrastructure. Okay. And this is the kind of thing. And with this, for example, we decided to create such a kind of organizing platform, if you want, based on this platform that is called Minca. Minca is the platform we used. The name of the Minca, it comes from a Quechua name. It's a Quechua name that basically means this collective work in favor of the community. So in pre-Columbian tradition, for example, imagine I live in a village, I have my potatoes, and I need to collect my potatoes, and all the village making a Minca collects and help me to collect the potatoes. And later on, maybe we need to build a house, or with my neighborhood, we can create a Minca, and we all together help him on building that house. So this idea of collective work We like it, and that's why we take this term. And it's inspired the platform on a very famous platform. It's called iNaturalist, but we thought, and if you want, we can discuss why we split a little bit with this iNaturalist. Explaining a little bit which are the features that we need in platforms to address these kind of things. I put this example that how the platform interacts with the communities. Whenever we think in the participatory community, the citizens, usually citizens are expecting a very short interaction. You know, I upload a picture, and in a matter of minutes, maximum days, I receive back, for example, identifications or commentaries or simply likes. We are now very in social media, you know, every time we do a kind of actions, we are expecting reactions in a matter of minutes, hours, in the worst case, days. While if you think in terms of academic or facilitating, thinking that facilitating many times are connected with decision makers, the way we interact with the platform is very much more different. We collect data for years before producing probably a paper. So our scales of interactions are much more different. And that's why, for example, we decided to create like these two phases that talks with the communities in a very different way. And with these two phases, we thought that the Janus God that has two faces has a good term to identify such a kind of differential behavior. And that's why we created this Janus framework. It's a paper that I will refer later on. One of, for example, of these dual things is that, particularly in Europe, but in many other places of the world, we have many different languages. And we do believe that the local activity needs to be done in local language. So that means that the platform should speak in the local language anytime that works with the participatory people, the communities, while obviously in I would say the academia usually speaks in English. So we can have probably here a single language, while here we have many different languages. And that's why, you know, we have many different languages already available, and we hope that we will get much more in the future. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. And then let's go to the practical thing. This basically creates a setup a little bit, you know, the scenario, what is needed and which are the features that we're expecting from the system. And let's focus on practical cases. One of the practical cases is this idea of to engage people in a large scale scenarios. And we designed these biomarathons as a large scale monitoring event. Basically, if you're familiar with BioBlitz, a biomarathon is a very much longer time BioBlitz. It takes probably one season, usually in summer. So the idea is in summer, collect as many as possible data. Again, if you want to think in this idea of multi-sectorial or multi-actors, we identify the participatory community, the people, the academics that in that particular area. I will explain now one of the first biomarathons. It's in this region of Spain. And that region of Spain, we are the academics involved on that. In the future, could be more. But mobilizing communities, pues there are the Federation of Underwater Activities, some SMEs, some NGOs, and the facilitating communities are these city councils that I mentioned. And then this is an example of this one local community in one place. In that place, there is a marine protected area in this region, but you can see that here, Oceanicos, it's the NGO that are interested on monitoring such a kind of a small MPA. And they try also to engage the local people in that area. And the city council of the area is the one that are interested. As you can see, through the years, what we have is we are increasing the number of local people involved on that, and we are increasing the participation. And basically, this is a kind of exponential growth. And you can see that what is interesting is every summer, there are more and more people, but during winter, there is a kind of retention effect, which is very important. So that means that we engage people during the summer, but we retain people during the winter to collect also that as well. You can see here, whenever we try to engage massive participation, one of the main constraints is that there are many people that they are willing to participate, they like to participate, but they have little knowledge on, for example, many people can go and with a smartphone or with a camera, they can collect one picture, but say, guys, I like to participate, but I have no idea which is that species. But the advantage of that platform, and similar to ANERIS, is that the system allows you to upload pictures in which you have no idea what is going on, and then you can have experts within the participatory community, usually experts within the academic, and sometimes the mobilizing committee, they have also expertise, and they can provide the identification of that. And this is what it creates what is called the community identification. And you can see this is a very collaborative, this idea of Minka, if you want, behind that. So you can see here, for example, that in 2023, we were very happy because we reached and we collect more than 100,000 observations. And now you can see, for example, it's a little bit of data, but it's last year that the number increased significantly. We were happy in 2023 for 100,000. In 2 years later, we have nearly 325,000. So you can see the number of increasing. So, and that's very important. With this big data, one of the advantages that obviously is that we are collecting a lot of pictures of the same species in a different scenarios. I put here ornate grass, which is one of the beautiful fishes in our areas, but you can see here how many different pictures. And this is ideal, later on for training artificial intelligence systems to collect and to identify in which of those pictures this species it's present. And this is basically what we are now doing, and we are thinking on this idea, what is called hybrid intelligence, in which we combine not only the expertise of human, but also the expertise of agents that are also interacting with the community. And this is an ongoing research, and we are including not only the capabilities of the artificial intelligence, but also the ethical and legal elements that are also linked to the use of artificial intelligence. Just to give you an idea, and within the project that I mentioned in ANERIS, this idea of trying to collect data all over the coast is something that we have achieved. So you can see here observations in 2020,001, and you can see there are several white squares. Keeping in mind that we are talking about 600 kilometers long and at least 10 by 10 kilometers resolution. And we have achieved such a large coverage and at the same time high resolution. And this is something that obviously it's because also we have increased the number of users, and obviously because we have a lot of observations and users, we have also a lot of taxonomic group species as well increasing. This is what we have achieved in ANERIS, and in BEAGLE, that's the next project. We want also to have an important issue, which is the contextualization. And I give you one example. Here, this square belongs to the Barcelona. Obviously, Barcelona, as a big city in the area, is where they are probably most of the population concentrated there. And obviously, this creates that in a high place or a high, populated area, the number of observations is among the highest one, and also the number of species reported, it's the same as well. And this does not happen the same. If you can see that it's also a symmetry in the sense that there are much more observations in the north than in the south in general, because also the population is different. And it's all these kind of things that we need to consider whenever later on collect this raw data and translate in this process of from data to information, how we extract the information in terms of patterns and trends, considering that we do not have homogeneous layer of observers. And basically this give us the example that what we have done here, but then obviously we want to expand this and in the future have many other places. And this is why we started collaborating with Rocío and the rest of the team there, and they started also having this part of the Portuguese coast, and hopefully you can see several places in which we are starting. Our dream is that at the end we will have plenty of communities all over the different coasts collecting data, managing their own data on their own, but later on we can address global scenarios. And then I leave the floor to Rocío. If you want, I can follow, you can, or do you prefer to, I think it's better if you say next and I will go.
Yeah, perfect. I can say next. Well, thank you, Jaume. Yes, I'm gonna show an example of application of this concept of biomarathon. It's called Biomarathon, and I am behalf of a great team and a big team here in Portugal, and I'm going to present how was the experiences along these 3 years already of this Biomarathon. Next. As you can see in the ANERIS webpage, this Biomarathon concept has like local adaptations, and in each initiative has evolved according to this environment. For example, in Catalonia, the Biomarathon is more focused in inside of the water, taking pictures, so the logistic is different. But in our case, in Portugal, all the interactions and the activities are in the intertidal. So this environment influences the type of activity that we can organize. Of course, the logistic, the requirements that we need, and somehow the profile of the participants. But this shows a bit of the flexibility of this concept of the biomarathons, because it can be either inside of the water or outside, and the power of this the collection of the pictures and the information is the same. Next. One thing that I want to highlight inside of this biomarathon, called in Portugal Biomaratona, it's the fact of the use of Minka as a platform to use to record the biodiversity. We are users, we are not developers, but we are in contact with the team of Jaume and the developers, and all the things that we are trying to fix and the ideas that we have are listened by them. So this is a really important thing for us as a users, because sometimes we need to add some things like, okay, what if we can put the temperature information or the salinity information? Can we do that? Can we add a point? And that's something that is new and for us really important as a users. And also one thing that it's really important is after the activities, we do webinars with the users, with the citizens, and also the partners, and they give us a feedback, and we can afterwards send this feedback to the developers to increase this platform. Next. So basically, the Via Maratona here in Portugal is developed in the intertidal, the rock intertidal. We found some challenges, of course, because of the weather in Portugal is not that amazing. But the main thing is we developed some guided activities during the low tide. We introduce the ecology of this system. We talk about the biodiversity that I can find, how is the ecology of this complex environment. And we try to encourage people to take pictures in Minka. What is the important thing about these activities is the intertidal is really accessible, and it's really easy for children and for citizens to find animals and algae that they were there and they couldn't find before. These systems is like near of cities and in really isolated areas, and we found a really high emotion about the people who were in front of these shores, but never understanding how complex was that environment before. Next. Thank you. Well, the first edition of this Biomaratona was in 2024, and because we are places in the north part of Portugal, we restricted the area to a manageable scale, and we did like a tiny project called Biomaratona Norte. We established a partnership with local organizations that were already doing some environmental education activities. And we introduce and integrate the Biomaratona in these activities, encourage the people to use Minka. Here in the upper part, you can see how it looks the Biomaratona project in the Minka webpage. And as you can see, we were really happy because we reached like almost 300 participants and we collect 700 observations. But of course, it was a bit demanding for us because we were all the time going with the people to take the pictures, and each of the pictures were taken in the activities that we run. Next. But well, last year we felt more confident and we expanded a bit the Biomarathon project, and now it's the entire coast of the continental Portugal. And one thing that it was really important is we have less participants, but they were more motivated. We had like almost 4,000 observations, but the most important thing is most of the observation were independent. So the people start to take pictures by themselves. So it's where, for us, it's a really turning point, because it started to be from the people. The interest came from the people. So, of course, several factors contribute to this success, because for us it was a success. First, we introduced tiny incentives like prizes to the participants who took more pictures. And also, I mean, I think it's one of the most important things, we were more active in the communication. We built a community by using Instagram. We share regularly pictures about the activities. We made questions. We share how was the physiology of the animals. We post ideas and activities that is related to this biomarathon. And then we did a votation between the best pictures, and the people choose, and we gave a prize. So this initiative began to create a community, and I think that was the most important thing of the last year. Next. Well, now this year we are really happy because I mean the Biomarathon started in May and is as every year, but we already have 1,000, almost 2,000 observations, and 1,000 and half were independent observations. So we can see now that the people are more focused, and it's about them. Of course, we did our part. We try to encourage them, and we have another partnerships. But for now, the main difference between the last years and this one is that we start to talk with school teachers and professors to spread the voice about the biomarathon and the MINC applications in schools. We try to encourage them to use this application to take pictures around the schools, but also to come with us to the shore and to show that the rock intertidal, it's a friendly place to interact with the environment. We have some projects that's gonna be starting the next year, but for this year, the first 3 months were trying to promotion this idea, to promote this idea, and to talk with schools and to have workshops. We did webinars, workshops, and we send the information to different schools. So this is the main difference between this year. So let's see how it goes next year. Next. So so far we have a high increase in the observations between the 3 years that this event it's running already. The most important thing is we increase the number of observations, we increase the number of partnerships, we spread the biomarathon along the Portugal coast. And one thing that it was a success, for example, is the fact as tiny organizations start to create projects by themselves, to use the Minka app and to record biodiversity in an independent way. So it's something that it's bigger than us. It's bigger than the biomarathon itself, and it's something that is happening this next week. Is starting a project, a monitoring recording in Minka, in a city called Ponte de Lima. It's really inside of Portugal. We don't have a clue who made this project in Minka, but he's taking pictures, and we are really happy about that. So this is a tool, and this is working, and the people, it's going with us with Bimaratona, but also it's applying for different tiny projects and by themselves. So we are enthusiastic about the future of Minka in Portugal. Next. Some things that we develop along this project is some educational material. As you can see here, this is a flyer that we create and we spread in all the activities that we do. Sorry, the questions are for the end, isn't it? Okay.
Yes, we'll wait to the end.
Okay, sorry. This is an example. We try to adapt these tiny flyers to each region of Portugal. For example, this one is for the North Portugal. This is the typical species that they can find, the common name and the species name. We share this with the people, but also we share this with another initiatives. This is open and available in Zenodo. And we also gave this the editable version to apply to another activities. And the idea is to adapt this also for the schools. We try to say to the professors that if they are interested in one species or one process, we can adapt this material to them and to adapt this to the one topic or one subject. Next, please. One example of this of the things that we had as a scientist from this Biomaratona event here in Portugal. These are records of the wakame, the Undaria pinnatifida, the invested species. These are new records in Portugal. For example, last year in 2025, in one activity here in the center of Porto, in a really famous beach, one of the presents found an algae, took a picture, and it was Undaria pinnatifida. That encouraged us to create an article already published where we analyze the distribution of the species, how was in the past and how is in the present, adding another layer of information, a layer of information from Minca that give us this give us a facility of having a lot of information, but with less effort. So it was really important for us. Next, please. Here you have the title of the article, and it's also the link if you want to download it. And here I'll also add some materials. One thing that we did afterwards is to create more specific materials like this guide of anemones or other guides of invasive non-native species in the coast. We adapt this to different projects, and for example, one of these guides were asked for one of our colleagues that we are working with activities, and because they organize activities in the tide pools, they asked us to do an anemone guide, and we did, and we developed. So that is the thing of the Biomarathon, is flexible enough to create these tiny environments and to adapt this to these tiny projects. And we are happy to create this in our language. As Jaume was saying, this is really interactive with the people, so they ask us and we create this material. The platform, it's in Portuguese, so it's really easy and flexible for all the citizens, for all the community. Next. So now, what is the future somehow of the Biomarathon? We are our team is part of the CCT1 network, and an idea. The CCT1 network, it's a network that it's collecting information of the temperature and biodiversity along the Atlantic. You can see in the blue dots the points that we already recorded the temperature and the biodiversity, and the orange, the ones that they are planning to do afterwards. And we have already connected people from places where they are collecting the information of the loggers, the ones that are recording the temperature, with the idea of introduce the Biomarathon and the collection of information in Minca. So this is a potential fair case of study of the expansion of the biomarathons, and it's going to be framework by the project BEAGLE. that's it. And of course, we want to thank you, and we have all the material available, and we are more than disposed to answer any question that you have.
Okay, thanks. So I think I will stop sharing then.
Thank you both for incredibly insightful presentations. It's really interesting just to see all the different complexities and dynamics that need to be considered when you're trying to make a successful engagement. And you walked us through a number of ways that you've empowered local communities. I see one question in the chat. Could we, oh, it's moved. Could we apply the Biomarathena marine multiple fish simultaneously with other marine organisms, and is the tool freely available?
Yeah, well, basically, Minka is designed as a bottom-up, so you can create your own projects, as Rocío was mentioned. So biomarathons is just one of the hundreds of projects. Anyone can create their own project, and as Rocío was mentioned, for us it's very important that at the end, usually people are a little bit attached to a place. There is a very interesting paper that is called The Power of Place. And I would say, let's save the world, but what happened with the beaches near to my village, and people are very attached to and that's probably one of the things that we have to consider, that if we want to ensure long-term participation, are those in the people that they believe that they have something in return. And one of the things that they have in return is that, okay, I'm willing to participate. I have no idea on how to identify species and so on, but I can create my own project, and the community can help us on identifying any picture that we take. Then there is this learning by doing. People become a little bit more and more experts, and they're starting having the capability of at least the common species to identify on their own, but also they have this local knowledge that they found sometimes rare things that, guys, I never seen this, and they uploaded. In some cases, these are alien species, invasive, or species of interest that has not been recorded for a while. But again, this is well, we mentioned that there is plenty of now material of training material. So if you want to create your project on your own, there is material to explain how to do it. But in any case, they can contact us. In any case, yeah, that we are willing to help them.
Thank you. And I know you've shared all of the various links in the chat as well, so they'll be able to access those resources. We have one question in the Q&A, and then I see Frank Muto-Cargo has asked a couple of questions in the chat. So one of the questions in the Q&A is they were interested in finding out who you're working with in Argentina.
Well, I am still connected with my old team that it's from Patagonia, but it's in Puerto Madryn, but it's the team of Gregorio Vigatti. That is my team, but I usually go once a month, and we take pictures and we interact with them, because we are still I'm still related with that team.
Okay, thank you. So I'll swap over to the questions that were posted there in the chat. So Frank is asking, so the networks you put together are amazing. He has two questions. The first one is, what science or applied analysis have you been able to do?
Yeah, well, basically the applied now our main research, or part of our main research, is try to understand now this. Okay, now we have demonstrated that with this type of approach, we can at least collect this, I would say, large scale systems in a high resolution. But we still now in the process of understanding. It's more or less, if you want give me an analogy, it's like, okay, we have demonstrated that we are able to send the satellites, collect the data, but now we need to correct, for example, the atmospheric correction. Without the atmospheric correction, the image is not very well, meaningful. So we are in this process now on correcting or adapting this difference on research effort or sampling effort, if you want, in order to provide, correct trends and patterns, because without this, it's like having these images with clouds and not correcting the atmospheric effect on the images.
An ongoing learning curve. Frank's second question, it relates to whether the Monkey publish data in the Darwin Core and to OBIS or GBIF.
Yes.
See nods from both.
We follow more or less that all the sets that has reached this research grade are published now in GBIF and in future also in OBIS. But what is important for us is the traceability, because we want to be sure that any people that has been involved in creation such a kind of data set could be acknowledged in the future. Otherwise, sometimes local people are disappearing in these metadata and so on, and at the end they are not properly acknowledged. One of the main priorities is, okay, let's upload this in larger scale repositories, but in any case, local people needs to be acknowledged in a proper way.
That kind of segues into the next question that we have in the Q&A. What do you think keeps people motivated to participate? I think you've touched on it a little bit, but I don't know if either of you want to expand a little bit more.
Well, probably one is place, the other is learning, the other is a knowledge. And I don't know, Rocío, if you think, but for me, these three I'm also feeling part of of a large community. So, okay, I have my local problem, but connected through this type of platforms and so on, I have the feeling that I'm contributing to a large global problems, but at the same time, I'm connected with many people all over the world that with the same interest and so on.
Yes, I think at least the most important thing that we saw, it's the like to be part of a community, to contribute somehow, and to talk with people and with the same interests.
Thank you. So I know we're running up to time, but there's only another 3 questions on the Q&A. So if you're both happy to hang on for another couple of minutes, we'll just walk through those. I think it's more fun to get live answers. So a question came in about the Pacific Ocean. Will Minka work for the Pacific Ocean?
Yeah. Well, it's a matter, as I said, it's bottom up. As long we convince people from the other side or from the Pacific to participate, they are more than welcome. You can create your own project everywhere in the world. There is no limit, and also you can select any kind of organisms. So the floor is for them to participate.
Excellent. Yeah, and there's a follow-up question, and specifically the same sort of question in terms of North Africa, Tunisia. So I think you've answered that in terms of Pacific. It still applies. That flexibility is probably key to your success. The last question I see in the chat is the Biomaritena a continuous event, or is it just happening at specific dates? I know you walked us through some of that, but perhaps just expand a little more on that.
Yeah, you want to answer, Rocío? Or?
Sorry, I thought you were like answer Irene, but yes, we started in May and we finished in October. The idea is to do like a BioBlitz more long in time, to have more opportunities to go to the shore and to take pictures. So yes, but it's in a specific period of time.
Yeah. But maybe just to insist that it's not a project by itself. It's basically a triggering system. It's a little bit, if you want, a way to engage people. But from this, there are several people say, oh, I found it really interested and I want to continue collecting data during winter. And also they realize that during the winter period, they even find other species that they are not so common during the summer. And this creates this idea, and then people start being engaged and they create their own projects and so on.
Yeah, so it's just like a continual loop.
Yeah.
The last question we have here is the goal mainly to retrieve more data? And I think you've spoken a little bit about this, but is it to retrieve more data, or is there also a public goal, like wanting to empower people? I actually wrote empowerment on my notes as you were both speaking, because I thought that was a kind of summary of exactly what both programs are doing, is that they're empowering people to get involved. But I'd like any last thoughts?
Yeah, it's that the scheme that I try to mention, that I would say the ideal scheme never happened. So one of the potential solutions is involving people all over, because we do need this kind of information. In fact, there is, if you want formally, and probably in the upcoming papers, we will try to justify formally that we need much more data than the one that we are collecting nowadays in situ. And this can only be, for us, the only way we can do it. Obviously, we can have drones and more sophisticated robots or whatever, but for us it's very important to engage people, because they are part of the solution of these monitoring challenges, but also they get conscious of the problems, of the environmental problems, and also they change a little bit their mind. As Rocío was mentioned, they are surprised. Wow, can we see so many species? For example, when we started in Barcelona, they said, come on, you are wasting your time. You will not see anything in Barcelona. It's a city. And then they realize, wow, we do have much more fishes than birds. Yeah. And there is a natural heritage also in urban coast as well.
Yeah.
That element of surprise.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for your amazing presentations. There's lots of thank yous in the chat, and I know there's additional links to the upcoming webinars, and I know we ran over a little bit, so thank you all for your patience and very insightful presentations. I personally learned a lot, so thank you again. And with that, I think we can wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. We still have people here with us, but I want to thank you. It was a great session.
Yeah, thank you. And also thank you to all of you to give us